Hey, welcome back. Today I made lemon cookies, but there's weed in it. This is based on a recipe by Love from the Oven, so I'll leave her link in the description if you want to check that out. And today I'm going to show you how I made 15 lemon cookies with about 20 milligrams each. As always, I started off by weighing out my weed. I was going for about 300 milligrams total, and here's the equation I use for dosing. Then I set my oven to 240, and while that's preheating, I'll start breaking up my weed. You just want to break your nugs into slightly smaller pieces, but don't grind it, because the flavor of the weed comes through a lot more if you do grind it. When the oven is ready, I put it in for about 35 minutes, and while that decarbs, I start melting my butter. I'm adding half a cup of water and 6 tablespoons of butter to a saucepan. Then I'll melt this on a very low heat. I want it to melt slowly and be sitting around a 185 to 200 degree range before I add in my decarbed weed. Once I add in my decarbed weed, I'm going to cook that for about 2.5 to 3 hours, stirring every 30 minutes or so and checking regularly to make sure I'm staying in that 185 to 200 degree range throughout the cooking process. When the butter is finished cooking, I just strain out the weed. The finer mesh you have, the less weed particles will end up in your final butter. You can already see the layer of butter starting to form on top of the water, but I like to stick a lid on mine and put it in the fridge to help that butter solidify a little bit quicker. When the butter has hardened, I just use a knife to break it up and take the pieces of butter out of the water. Then I like to weigh my butter to make sure I have enough for my recipe. I ended up needing to add a little bit more to get back to my 6 tablespoons this time. I left my butter out for about an hour so it could soften, and the first step on our cookies is to cream your butter until it is light and fluffy like this. Then I added half a cup of sugar and whisked that together until it was fully combined. Then I added in 1 egg and the zest from 1 lemon. I don't have a lemon zester, but if you do, that might be a little bit easier. I just used the small side of a cheese grater and that worked pretty well. Then I added 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and whisked all of this together. Then I added in 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt and a couple of drops of yellow food coloring. The food coloring is totally optional, but I did think it made the cookies look a little bit cuter and more yellow. The final thing to add is 1.5 cups of flour. I added mine gradually and switched from a whisk to a spatula to make it a little bit easier to mix it all in. I did check my dough at the end by touching it with my finger and just making sure none of it sticks to it, but if your dough is a little bit sticky, you can add a couple tablespoons of additional flour. Then I put that in the fridge for about an hour before I moved it to some parchment paper and started shaping it into a log or like a long cylinder shape. When you're rolling this out, make sure you try to flatten the ends if you can, just so that your end cookies won't be rounded when you cut them. And when you finish rolling it, just wrap it up in your parchment paper and stick it in the fridge for a couple of hours. When the cookie dough has stiffened up a little bit, you'll want to cut it into slices. Mine happened to be just about 15 centimeters, so I scored it about every centimeter and then tried to cut the cookies as evenly as I could. Here they are all ready to go. Then I set my oven to 350 and bake these for about 12 to 15 minutes or until they're golden on the edges and kind of firm to the touch on top. The final step is to make the icing for the top, so I got 1 cup of powdered sugar and just about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. It was like 1 and a little bit extra, and then I just mixed that together until it is a good consistency, about like this. You could drizzle this across them or dip it into the icing if you wanted to. I used a spoon to try to make it more circular on the top, but it's pretty liquidy icing, so it kind of fell off of any of them that weren't perfectly flat. But that is it. You'll just leave them out until the icing has hardened on top. And if you want to, you can scrape the extra icing off the sides like I did. Like I said, these should be about 20 milligrams each, but with homemade edibles it is hard to tell, so just eat half if you need to, and keep in mind it can take 2 to 3 hours for edibles to fully kick in. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, and if you make these at home, I would love to see pictures. You can find me on Instagram, and as always, thank y'all so much for watching.